Speaking about Abbas Hashem, person has the obligation to love Hashem. And here he's explaining it's just not only an obligation, if one understands to what degree he's a beneficiary of Hashem's unlimited giving, maintaining at every level, it's impossible not to have love Hashem. He said, but what's the ultimate? In the ultimate sense, what are we the greatest beneficiaries of? So he explains, for this reason, Klal Yisrael should rejoice in their Maker. God created the world for a purpose. And he chose us, that we are the nation. The objective and the value of all existence is only us, not the nations of the world. And what did he give us? The means, the medium to bring about the objective. He gave us his Torah, which is truth on the absolute level, which allows us to be directly connected to the source of life, which is himself. You can only cleave to God only through what? Through that medium, which is the Torah itself. Right? The text of every bracha before, which predicates every mitzvah, we've been sanctified through his mitzvos. Only because we assume a level of sanctification that creates that commonality between ourselves and him. Therefore, we're able to cleave to him. And he chose us to be his officiants and to bless in his name. And if we succeed through these mediums which he provided us with, and we meet the objectives of creation, we merit a share in the world to come. And what's Olam Haba? Ashi Tova Gedola. It's something which is not to be explained or described within the human context. It's not possible even to relate to. We read in Pirkei Avos that one moment of a Koras Ruach means even a whiff of the world to come. We go Chayil Mazeh. If you take all the pleasures of this world and all the value and you encapsulate it to one moment, from the beginning of existence till the end, its innate value does not come to one whiff of the world to come. Why? Because it's very simple. Whatever this world is, it's finite. The world to come is infinite. So the moment you're connected to the infinite at any level, it's still more than finite. Therefore, even if you encapsulate all the pleasure and the value, innate value of this world from the first moment to the last moment, in a moment, it's still finite. The world to come is not finite. It's infinite. And what is the world to come? The world to come is having a connection with Hashem, who's the source of everything. So that a person enters a mind, if the person serves Hashem with ulterior motive, to have a share in the world to come, it's worth it. It's worthwhile. That's always a question. Is it worthwhile? No, it's worthwhile. But the moment you speak worthwhile, that means it's worth an ulterior motive. Why am I doing it? Because it's worthwhile. You should do it because God said so. That's not because you're a beneficiary. But if you achieve a level of clarity that you serve God not for the sake of reward, not because you're going to be a beneficiary of anything. It's like we said, a child, an immature person, he's going to have a relationship with a very accomplished person. And that accomplished person is a very good person giving. So the immature person, rather than seeing that person 40 years in terms of his qualities, what he's able to learn from him, he says, because he's going to give me, he will benefit me by giving me material. He'll take me out to dinner, pick up the tab. Is that what the person's all about? So when you reach a level of understanding of what it means to do God's will, you're not there for the crumb. You're there for the relationship. As Yismach Yosef Yoser, your joy will be even greater. It'll be something which is not to be fathomed. Because the greatness of God is unlimited. You know, the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that Gedolam Tzadikim Malchei Ashoris, that a tzaddik is greater than the greatest ministering angel. The Gemara tells us in Chagiga that the certain angels, their dimension of being to travel, whatever this means, it's esoteric, from the thigh to a certain part of its profile takes 500 years. That's how this is the dimension of these angels. A tzaddik, this little measly little 5'5" person, tzaddik, his innate value is greater than the angel. Why? We've explained this many times. An angel, whatever he is, whatever dimension he is, whatever function he functions, he's that because God created him to be that. A tzaddik, nobody's born a tzaddik. As the Gemara tells us in Nida, every pronouncement of a person's life is done before conception. Wise, foolish, strong, wealthy, poor. Tzaddik Rosho, that pronouncement's not made. So therefore, your status within the realm of Kedusha, of spirituality, that's not predetermined. That's we're a self-made person. The angel is what he is because God created him to be that. Therefore, Gedolim Tzadikim, Yosem Alchei Ashoris, a tzaddik is greater than the greatest angel. Because even though the angel, in terms of what he is, his understanding, surpasses the tzaddik endless times over, but that's an endowment. The tzaddik's not an endowment. That came through his own initiative. Therefore, his accomplishment innately has greater value in God's eyes than the Malach. Now, the Mishnah tells us at the end of Makos, you say this after whenever you finish learning. God wanted to bring merit to the Jewish people, and therefore He gave us an abundance of Torah mitzvos. So this famous Rambam is Pirush Mishnah, his commentary on the Mishnah writes over there. He asks a question. He's given us an unlimited amount of mitzvahs because He wanted to increase our opportunity to be more meritorious. Just the opposite. If you have more to cover, there's a greater likelihood you're going to fail because you can be held accountable for what you didn't cover. So the Rambam writes over there that a person, if he does one mitzvah in his lifetime, even once, on that perfect level, he merits the ultimate level of the world. Even though you fail on many times, doesn't make a difference. But if you're able to achieve it once in a lifetime, to perform perfectly, what we call shleimus, you've merited the ultimate. So He gave us endless opportunities. Even though there's a greater likelihood of failing on many levels, doesn't make a difference. But among all those failings, if you succeed once perfectly, you've made it.
Rabbi, how do we define a perfect mitzvah?
Only God knows.
I mean, you want to give tzedakah, you want to do chesed. I mean,
Yeah, no idea. No idea.
You try your best. How do you know? I'm only asking you in the sense of how do we perform that?
There was a certain Amora who thought he was very humble. And he wasn't deluding himself. He was very humble. But one of his colleagues, when he saw his level of humility, he understood that he's not sufficiently humble. What was the story? At the time of the Gemara, even time of the Gaonim, the methodology of transmitting Torah, you'd have a person who was a Betulim. It was like an intermediary. And the Rambam explains this. The Rosh Yeshiva would state his position on a subject matter. The Talmidim would listen to it, but the intermediary would repeat verbatim what the Rosh Yeshiva said and give it over, transmit it to the students. Students would ask a question. Although the Rosh Yeshiva The Rebbe heard it. The intermediary would repeat the question and present it to the Rebbe. There was always this intermediary. Okay. So this Amora, he's one of the interpreters of the fields. He's very humble, which he was. And he sees his colleague is giving a public shiur, and he says something, and the intermediary doesn't say over to the students what the Rosh Hashiva said. He says over his own Torah. Yeah. And continuously, the Rosh Hashiva says his position on a certain subject matter, and the intermediary says it over, doesn't say over with the Rosh Hashiva, but he says over his own Torah. And the Rosh Hashiva keeps quiet. He puts up with this. He tolerates it. See, when his colleagues saw this behavior, that he didn't protest to any degree, he just kept quiet. He says, I don't think I could have tolerated that. Here I say something, and this man, his purpose is to give over what I said, and he says over things in his own name, not in my name, and not even what I said. This man has a level of arrogance not to be tolerated. But he kept quiet. He says, now I understand what humility is. So I'm saying very often we have certain understandings of what is, what's perfect. On the bell curve, it's perfect. But on the innateness of what it is, it's far from perfect. I'll tell a story. Moshe Feinstein, Zech Tzaddik Levroch, had a son-in-law. His name was Moshe Elio Shizgal. He was married to his oldest daughter. And he was a man who was a genius, one of a kind, but he was a tzaddik, and my father was very close with him. I grew up, and I knew him too, but I was a child. Where Reb Aaron Kotler would meet him at a wedding, Reb Aaron Kotler would run after him to speak in Torah with him. But if you would speak to him, he spoke slowly, intentionally, that you shouldn't appreciate who he is. He didn't want anybody to know that he's a genius or he was such a great Talmud Chacham. And he behaved with a level of humility, I'm telling, not to be believed. An example of this. He himself was a Rosh Hashiva, and many Torah V'das, different places. And he was a rabbi in the shul. Why was he a rabbi in the shul? His father came to the United States when he was 8 years old. And with his family, and his father was a rav in the shul on the Lower East Side. The shul, when he became the rabbi, the shul must have been already 100 years old. The building was an old, decrepit building. And his father passed away. And he was a man already in his 20s. Being the oldest son, he felt out of respect, he should take over the shul. The median age in that shul was 70 and above. Old people, nobody paid dues. There was debt over your head. You could drown in the debt. But he did it for his father. That's what he did it. Out of respect for his father, he took over the shul. That means, regardless of his busy schedule as a Rosh Hashiva, he would come early in the morning to be there, make sure to be back for Mincha Ma'ariv. He would give classes there late at night to accommodate these old people. Okay? My father used to drag me when I was a little boy, before it got light, very often to daven there. And, okay? And so people, the younger people used to come, they would give donations to the shul, and they would give him money to be able to address the deficit. All of a sudden, a Hasidic Rebbe shows up, who is older than him, stranger, had nothing to do. And Rabbi Shizgal honors him. He says, I pray on one side of the Yom, you pray on the other side. Hasidim, when they pray with a gartel. Okay? It's you. The shul was an Ashkenaz shul. It was not Svard. It was not Hasidish. All of a sudden, this Hasidic rabbi puts up a sign, you can only go to the Omud if you wear a gartel. You hear this? It's not a shul. Because he felt that's the way it should be. It ruffled a lot of people's feathers. This man comes in, you give him the honor. He's already dictating how the shul should function. He doesn't contribute anything other than him being there. So they go to Rav Shizgal, and they say, Shizgal, How do you tolerate this? He said, let it be. Let it be. Not a word. It comes before Yom Tif, because he developed relation with people. So people started giving money. So the money that would have gone to Rabbi Shizgal is going to this person. The other people, they would come and live it. Here you need the money, not even talk for yourself, just to maintain the shul. And this person is siphoning off all this money. How do you not say anything? Let it be. Somebody else would burst a blood vessel. Putting up with this kind of stuff, not a word. What happens? And this happened, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur Sukkos, comes Hanukkah, all of a sudden this man has a heart attack, he dies. He's gone. Hashem took him out. No longer competition. But until that happened, Rabbi Shishkal did not wish this man bad. Hashem runs the show. It's God's world. You have to be mavro midosav. You have to look away. You tell me, what level of humility is that? Who can tell me such a thing? So, Alan, let's talk about things which are easy. We can get to that.
Perfect davening.
Tzedakah. Let's say charity. You have a man who is medium wealth. Poor man comes, writes him a check for $25. It may be something significant to him to a degree. Let's say a man has very little. And he barely could make ends meet. But because of this other person's need, he has to marry off a daughter, or literally has orphans that he has to feed. He says, you know something? Thank God I have a family. There's a mother, a father. My children do okay. I'm willing to compromise on our material needs to give this man, because he doesn't have a wife, and he's fending for himself. And if he can't feed his children, it'll have terrible repercussions. And he gives it away. And it's like giving away a pound of flesh. The other person gives it, it's considered very nice, very generous, but it's not the same. And what is the intent? Do you do it l'shem shamayim? Do you do it because you're a bleeding heart? Is that why? Only Hashem can make these evaluations. There's so many components to determine qualitatively what something is, what something's not. That's what he said. Only Hashem could make that evaluation. Is it sufficiently complete that you deserve that special place in the world to come? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I just want to.
It says that when it speaks about the 10 martyrs, Reb Hanani ben Trajan, who was he was the father of Reb Meir, he was burnt by the Romans. He had a Sefer Torah wrapped around him and burnt at the stake. So before he was going to be put to death, Reb Yossi ben Kisma, who was a colleague of his, and he asked him, does he have a share in the world to come? So he says, tell me something about yourself. He says, I'll tell you a story. Initially it was Purim, and I had money which I designated to distribute to the poor and Purim. And that money intermingled with my other money, which was a tremendous amount of money. And I wasn't sure which was the Purim money. I didn't remember the amount of money was for Purim or which was my money. So you know what I did? I gave it all away. And I didn't justify saying the Purim money is less or more. I just gave it all away, not to get involved in the question. So when he told him that, he says, you know, he did the mitzvah of charity with shleimus in a perfect way. That's what he told him. This was his evaluation. He just cites that. And therefore he says, I mean, we're talking about Tanoim. Yes, do I have a share in the world to come? Of course, what do you mean you have a share in the world to come? But the question he asked him was, to have that special location, that I achieved that special level of accomplishment of shleimus. So that's what he says, tell me something that happened in your life. I mean, the man studied Torah day and night. Tell me something unique, something special. And when we told him that, he says, no, you have a share in the world to come. He meant that special location that you achieve because he did the mitzvah b'shleimus.
Yeah. Okay.
Tells us it's based on a pasuk. If Torah would not be in effect continuously, the world wouldn't exist. So Rav Chaim Volozhiner cites the Zohar that says that if there would be a moment in existence when no person would be studying Torah, the world would revert back to pre-existence. Because the bris Torah has to be in effect continuous. Even one Jew studying Torah. Okay? So Rabbi Shosalanter was leading Torah say she was learning with a chavrusa, with his study partner. And it must have been like 3, 4 in the morning. And his study partner says to him, do you realize it's 3 in the morning? Probably we're the only one studying Torah at this moment. Do you realize the world may be standing and exists because of us? That's what his study partner said to him. Rabbi Shol says to him, let's not waste time, just let's keep studying. This guy's getting impressed with himself. He's holding up the world. Rabbi Shol says, what are you wasting my time for? Let's just keep going and learn. Again, you can't, for a moment, the moment you start resting on your laurels and being who you are, you become enamored with yourself. Once you become enamored with yourself, then already you put yourself on a pedestal. If I'm already there, I'm entitled maybe to slow it up a little bit. No, there's so much to accomplish. There's no moment to waste because every moment is infinitely precious because you only have so many moments to live in your life. And you're given those moments exactly for that reason.
Is there a difference between really enjoying your learning and say, wow, this is great, I love it, and really feeling like I'm doing such a good job, I love doing this?
There is a difference. There's a sefer, there's a work on the 39 melachos of Shabbos. It's called Iglei Tal. Tal is due. But Tal, the letters are Lamates. Lamates. The Lamates melachos, 39 categories of melachos of Shabbos which are not permitted, and he expounds on it. And it was authored by the Avnei Nezer. Avnei Nezer was the Sochotchover. He was one of the leading Torah sages in the 1800s in Poland. And over there he has an introduction, and he speaks about when you study Torah, innately you're supposed to enjoy it. And once went to Rav Yoshev, and I spoke to him about somebody had a phenomenal mind, but he says he doesn't enjoy studying Torah, doesn't enjoy it. So Rav Yoshev says to me, it's impossible not to enjoy it. He says, a person that has healthy taste buds and you put honey on his tongue, is he going to taste sweetness? How do you not taste sweetness? He says, there must be a problem. The problem is either with his kabrusa, he doesn't have the right study partner, or the Rebbe, the teacher, is not the right teacher. But if the teacher is the right teacher, and the Rebbe is the right Rebbe, and the study partner is right, he will enjoy it, without a question. That was his answer to me. So over there in the introduction to this work, Iglei Tau, he writes over there that Torah innately is something which is pleasurable. We say every morning in the Birchas HaTorah, Harav Hashem Elokeinu Divri Sorosu. You should make the words of Torah pleasant in our mouths. That when we study it, we should sense its pleasantness. Because that is innately what it is. And if you don't sense its pleasantness, that means something's lacking. You're missing something. So that you experience something exceptional, it's terrific. But therefore, I did a great thing, then already that's priding yourself. Once you start priding yourself, then you're in the danger zone. Because if you pride yourself, that means maybe I have a right. Now I have entitlement. I have a right to take a break. I have a right to slow up a little bit. Therefore, that's why that's not permitted. But if you appreciate what you did, you want to do more, and you understand you have the capacity to do more. So of course you can do more. You're not distracted with patting yourself on the back. And capacity. He's an employee, and he gets a very nice salary. Why does the employee give him that salary? To motivate him that he realizes he's getting the salary because he has a capacity, so he's going to produce for the company. And he produces and does well. What does the employer do? Gives him a bonus. So the bonus incentivizes him to do even better. Definitely not less. And the employee sets certain goals for him. If you do so much more, you get a double bonus. Let's say the person did so well, the owner comes and says, I'm willing to take you in as a partner. We're going to be partners. Now that he owns the company, He doesn't have to be incentivized anymore by getting bonuses. It's your company. When it's your company, you want to build this company to your best ability. And if you understand your capacity, you don't get distracted that you need incentives. I want the business to be successful. You do whatever you can to make it successful. That's exactly the difference. When you're an employee, it's me and there's the company. Is it worth my while? I need incentives. Once it's yours, you don't need incentives any longer. It's yours. This is my life. I'm going to build it to my best ability. One time to dedicate your life to Torah in the United States wasn't easy. What was a kollel going back 60 years ago? Person who gets this, he's going to study. If you had 1 million of people, it was a lot. People discouraged it very much. Why? Because this is post-World War II. And parents, they hammered into everybody's head, you got to make something of yourself. You can't become a ward. We had enough in Europe. You have to be self-sufficient. You have to be a self-earner. You got to get yourself a college degree, even though those days become an accountant, become a this, become a that. They didn't speak about going to medical school because in those days, there was a quota of how many Jews could go to medical school. Your father had to be very wealthy to pay all donations to the university that you should be able to go to medical school. So there were very few people who sat and studied. Beyond a certain age, they went to college. Of course, they were observant, but that was it. It was very difficult. But there were some people, they became exceptional Talmidei Chachamim, because despite all the ridicule or the lack of acknowledgement, they toed the line. Despite that, today it's a lot easier. You go to Lakewood, they have 8,000 people, married people sitting and studying. So you have a whole support system. Israel, you have thousands of what they call Evreichim. They don't call them cold people. Evreichim, sitting and studying. It's a whole movement. Despite everything, we live in a different world today. But in those days, to be able to make that decision, despite not receiving the acknowledgement, and despite that, just to dedicate your life in a sincere, correct way was exceptional. Alan asks, what's doing a mitzvah b'shleimus? What's doing a mitzvah perfectly? Do we know? Some people sacrifice. They make sacrifices. Not simple. Everything's based on, as they say, everything is in the eyes of the beholder. The way you value something, it's the way you see it. You see it as being exceptional, then you go after it. You see it as being something nice, something appropriate, then you start weighing it. Is it worth my while? Not worth my while. And if other things are more worthwhile, this goes to the wayside, becomes secondary. That's what happens. Remember when in the 50s, there was a certain person, he was graduated the Mir Yeshiva from Europe, and he came to the United States, he got married after the war, and he had to support a family. So he became a cab driver, drove a cab. The man was a phenomenal Talmid Chacham. Became a cab driver. He had young children. He's driving the cab, and he had a hold. And the person who held him up not only took the money, he hit him over the head, and he had a brain concussion, and he died. He died of a brain concussion. He left a wife, a widow, with a few orphans. It was what we call a real Rachmanus. It's a tragedy. Of course, the person lost his life. Relatively speaking, he was a young man, and he left over. And here, the man is trying to earn a living, and look what happens. So they say, the guy was a low yutzloch. The man didn't have a chance to succeed. Because he didn't have the secular education here. That's why he became a cab driver. Whatever it is. What I mean, the man was doing his best. Instead of seeing him in a positive light, you're going to criticize this. It's his fault that his wife's a widow. What I mean, the man was doing his best. He didn't want to take charity, so he's supporting the wife. But everybody has his way to see it, and it's a challenge. Do you see it through a critical eye? Do you see it as something you esteem? The man doesn't want to take, in those years, a person would not take government assistance. If you remember, it was called relief. If you would take government assistance, it was relief. For a Jew to take relief, it was a disgrace. A Jew would prefer work day and night rather than take a dime from the government. Who took relief? The people who came in from Puerto Rico, they were on relief. A Jew is a self-earner under no circumstance. We don't do that kind of thing. But once things changed in the United States, where even if you earned money, you're eligible for certain things. So the stigma of accepting government assistance wasn't a stigma anymore, because you weren't a beggar. Because even if you earned $40,000, $50,000, you're still eligible for certain things from the government, for your family, for the children. I remember there was a program, it's called WIC. Do you remember WIC? Women, Infants, and Children. That if you had children below the age of 3, even if you earned 40, 50,000, which was pretty much because they wanted the children to eat a healthy diet. So if you got a note from the pediatrician that your child was underweight or not, or overweight, obese, that means the child wasn't being fed correctly. So you would get coupons from the government. You buy certain things which are healthy, whole grain cereal, milk, juice, whatever it was. You'd have to be so. Once the stigma was taken off, people went all the way. Everybody went to the trough. The government's giving away money. You take it. You can do a mitzvah lishma, you can do a mitzvah shelo lishma, right? You do it with an ulterior motive. You can do it for the sake of the mitzvah. Let's say you do it for the sake of mitzvah, because God says you shouldn't put on census. Do you do it because out of fear? Do you do it out of love? And even if you do it, the various levels of love, right? Maybe because it's easy. It would be more difficult. Do you do it out of reverence or something which is not sufficiently revered? Because if you had a conflict, maybe you wouldn't do it. All these issues, only God knows. Only God can make them. Only God has the yardstick to make that evaluation. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva that what is it tzaddik? That the majority of your actions are meritorious and the minority are negative. And what's a Russia? The other way. So Rambam says, don't think this is a quantitative evaluation. This is a qualitative evaluation. And the only one who has the capability of making this evaluation is Kel Deos, is only God himself. Nobody else can make this evaluation. So what I'm saying, so what we believe is avo. We believe is reverence. What we believe is a lot of things. That's not the determining factor. There's so many factors. You come from an observant background. Other person doesn't. And despite that, he still does the right thing. You're both doing the same thing with the same intensity. But because the other person comes from a different background, maybe his level of commitment, God values to a greater degree than yours. Although today you're on par, but it's still not the same. So I'm saying there's so many aspects of the mitzvah that only God can make that evaluation. So that's what the Rambam says. It's not quantitative. He said so many mitzvahs versus so many transgressions. No, it's qualitative, and therefore only the Kel Deos, only God himself can make what's majority and what's minority. So us, to even begin understanding, to calculate, the Chofetz Chaim writes, every time you speak Lashon Hara, or over a short period of time, you can be in violation of 14 positive commandments, 17 negative commandments. Comes Yom Kippur, we do tshuva, Lashon Hara. Do you realize you have to do tshuva on every time you speak Lashon Hara? On every negative, every positive commandment? Is it possible even to relate to it? We don't even remember what we said, what we didn't say. How many times did we speak Lashon Hara? How many times would we say Yud Kei Vav Kei, we weren't focused and you said the name of Hashem without thinking about it? That he's master, he's infinite. It's a disrespect. As a result of that, there's a level of accountability. But unfortunately, we're so disconnected, are we held really accountable to the nth degree? Maybe we're not, because we live in a daze. But again, all these issues that I'm bringing up now, only God can make that evaluation. God is the ultimate judge. That's the reason why we say, don't pass judgment on your fellow until you're in this place. You never know what the issues are. Therefore, well, if I would have done it differently. And you're passing judgment, you have no right to do that. Only God can pass judgment. Because again, as I'm saying, to make a true evaluation, the positive and negative, you have to be the Kel Deus. You have to be God himself to make that evaluation. Therefore, you have no right to pass judgment unless it's beyond any doubt that he did certain things and he's classified in a certain way. You know, when I first moved to Muncie, my kids grew up in Baltimore. It was called Yeshiva Lane. Yeshiva had an 88-acre property with faculty housing. And we lived in the faculty housing. My kids were born on Yeshiva Lane. And they never saw Chilul Shabbos. They never saw cars driving on Shabbos because everything was private roads. We moved to Muncie, even though there were many observant people, and we lived in an area which very few cars drove through a neighborhood. My children, they're young, and they see cars coming through on Shabbos. And they say to me, what's it about? And they say, it must be a non-Jew driving through. A Jew doesn't drive on Shabbos. You know, they were children. They never saw a Jew driving on Shabbos. So I said to them, unfortunately, some of them are Jews, but unfortunately, they don't know any better. Because they don't know any better, that's why they're driving through. Rather than saying a bunch of irreligious people. No. Do I know why, what, when? I have no idea. Unfortunately, they're driving because they don't know any better. Rather than develop a certain perspective and attitude towards non-religious people. If you could say it in the positive, you shouldn't say it in the negative. We're not here to pass judgment. Unless, as you say, you got to call the spade a spade sometime. But it wasn't so clear it was a spade. As a result of that, you have to give the person the benefit of doubt. His background, maybe he doesn't have appropriate, have good experiences, who knows what.